Daisy O'Brien stood in the reception area of the Royce Global headquarters, 40 floors above the city. Her palms were sweating, and the monolithic black granite walls and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial canyons screamed that she did not belong here. The paperwork in her folder felt like a death sentence to her former self. Legacy Creation Agreement. Compensation, $450,000. She was selling 9 months of her body to save the community center her late father built, a lifeline purchased at the cost of her future peace. Desperation had forced her through these gilded doors. "Miss O'Brien, Mr. Royce is ready for your 2 o'clock." Daisy's heart hammered as she followed the assistant. The executive suite was Darian Royce's dominion, but the view vanished when she focused on the man by the window. Darian was an impossible contradiction. Tailored European suit, cold control in his posture, yet a deep, soulful loneliness in his steel-gray eyes. "Miss O'Brien," he said, his voice low, "thank you for coming to finalize the arrangement." "Of course," she managed. "I've reviewed your file. Dr. Lin's psychological assessment deemed you highly resilient." "I cry watching commercials where the dog gets adopted," Daisy confessed. Darian's lips twitched. "I haven't cried in a decade. Why accept this, given the non-standard terms?" Daisy felt the cold edge of the contract. "The money is for my family's legacy. It's the only way to save it." "Legacy," he repeated. "My wife, Eliza, died 3 years ago. We had 1 embryo left, 1 last chance. I need a woman who understands this isn't just a transaction. This is the final physical anchor to everything I lost. I need someone who will treat this child with love and gravity, not just like a paycheck." Daisy's composure fractured. "I know what it means to fight for a legacy and to carry something more precious than your own life." Darian reached across the space, his hand hovering. "Then prove to me you are the woman destined to protect my empire, starting with its heir." Daisy signed the contract with a steady hand, though her heart was screaming. The pen was solid gold, weighty as guilt. Each clause felt like a surrender. Monthly medical examinations, dietary restrictions, mandatory residence within city limits, 0 emotional attachment to the child. The final clause made her stomach turn. Upon successful implantation, all parental rights would be immediately and irrevocably terminated. She would walk away with the money and nothing else. Darian watched her with the intensity of a man cataloging an investment. When she set the pen down, he slid a check across the mahogany desk. The first installment, $150,000, enough to keep the community center's lights on for another year. "The implantation procedure is scheduled for next week," Darian said, his tone clinical. "Dr. Amara Khalil is the best reproductive endocrinologist in the country. You'll meet with her tomorrow to begin the protocol." "I understand." "Do you?" His gray eyes bore into hers. "This isn't a fairy tale, Ms. O'Brien. I'm not looking for a mother for this child in the emotional sense. I'm looking for a vessel, a safe, healthy, responsible vessel. When this is over, you'll return to your life and I'll raise my heir. Clean separation." Daisy met his gaze without flinching. "I signed the contract, Mr. Royce. I know exactly what this is." But even as she said it, she felt the lie settle in her chest. Because the moment he'd mentioned his late wife, the moment he'd revealed the raw grief beneath his billion-dollar armor, something had shifted. She'd seen the human beneath the empire. 3 weeks later, Daisy stood in the foyer of Darian's penthouse, her small suitcase looking pathetic against the marble expanse. The pregnancy had taken on the first attempt, and Dr. Khalil had delivered unexpected news. Daisy's blood pressure required close monitoring. Darian's response had been immediate and non-negotiable. She would move into his home. "Your suite is on the 3rd floor," Darian said, gesturing toward the floating staircase. "Mrs. Chin, my housekeeper, will show you around. Meals are served at 7, 1, and 7. I expect you to attend dinner unless you're medically indisposed." "Do you want me to eat with you?" "I want to monitor your nutritional intake personally." Of course, everything was about control with him. Daisy followed Mrs. Chin through rooms that felt more like museum galleries than living spaces. Her suite was larger than her entire apartment, decorated in soft creams and golds. A bowl of fresh fruit sat on the side table, and the bed looked like it cost more than her annual salary. "Mr. Royce wants you comfortable," Mrs. Chin said gently. "He may seem cold, but he cares deeply about this child." That night at dinner, Daisy sat across from Darian at a table built for 12. The silence was suffocating. She forced herself to eat the expertly prepared salmon while he reviewed documents on his tablet. "Do you always work through meals?" she asked finally. He looked up, surprised. "Time is money, Miss O'Brien." "Time is also life, and you're missing yours." His jaw tightened. "I appreciate your concern, but I didn't bring you here for philosophical advice." "Right, just the womb." The words hung in the air like a slap. Darian set down his tablet, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "Is there a problem with our arrangement?" "No," Daisy said quietly. "Just trying to understand the man who's going to be this child's father." "You don't need to understand me. You need to stay healthy and follow protocol." But that night, alone in her gilded suite, Daisy couldn't stop thinking about the loneliness she'd seen in his face when she thought she wasn't looking. The weeks blurred together in a strange domestic rhythm. Daisy began to notice things about Darian that contradicted his Ice King persona. He left classical music playing softly in the library. He donated anonymously to 3 different charities every month, Mrs. Chen confided. He worked punishing hours, but never raised his voice at his staff. One evening, Daisy found him in his study, head in his hands, surrounded by reports. She hesitated in the doorway. "Mr. Royce, are you all right?" He looked up sharply. "I'm fine, just a difficult acquisition." She should have left, but something about his exhaustion made her step inside. "Want to talk about it?" "Why would I discuss business with you?" "Because sometimes an outside perspective helps. My father used to say, the best solutions come from people who aren't drowning in the problem." Darian studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Meridian Technologies. I'm trying to acquire them before my competitor, Grant Ashford, does. But the founder, Sarah Kim, won't sell to either of us. She thinks we'll debt her company for parts." If you can't stand people who treat others like disposable assets, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Type, "Nobody deserves that." Because what happened next between Darian and Daisy only got worse before it got better. Will you? No, her technology could revolutionize sustainable energy. I want to scale it, not destroy it. Then tell her that, Daisy said simply. Show her your vision. Stop trying to buy her loyalty and earn it instead. The next morning, Darian was gone before dawn. He returned that evening with the signed acquisition papers and something new in his expression when he looked at Daisy across the dinner table. Respect. The breakthrough came during a routine ultrasound. Dr. Khalil had set up the equipment in Darian's home to minimize Daisy's stress. Darian stood rigidly by the window while the doctor moved the wand across Daisy's small bump. Then the heartbeat filled the room, fast, strong, unmistakable. "Perfect," Dr. Khalil murmured. "Everything looks excellent." Daisy turned to see Darian's reaction and found him frozen, his face stripped of all its careful control. Tears, actual tears, shimmered in his eyes. "Darian?" Daisy whispered, forgetting the formal address. He moved without thinking, crossing the room to stand beside her. His hand found hers, gripping tight, as he stared at the screen showing the tiny, flickering life. "That's—" his voice broke. "That's my child." "Yes," Daisy breathed. Their eyes met, and the air between them ignited. The professional distance they'd maintained shattered in that moment. His thumb traced circles on her palm, and she saw him truly for the first time, not the billionaire, not the grieving widower, but just a man desperate for connection. Dr. Khalil cleared her throat pointedly. "I'll give you a moment." When she left, Darian didn't release Daisy's hand. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "That was inappropriate." Was it? Or was it human? He pulled away, conflict written across his features. "This arrangement has clear boundaries, Miss O'Brien. We can't. I can't." "Can't what? Feel something?" "Feeling something would complicate everything." He turned toward the window, shoulders rigid. "I won't make that mistake again." But Daisy had felt the tremor in his hand, had seen the hunger in his eyes. The boundaries were already crumbling. 3 days later, the tension between them was unbearable. Darian worked from home, their paths crossing constantly. Shared glances lasted too long. Accidental touches lingered. The air hummed with everything they weren't saying. It shattered on a Thursday evening. Daisy was in the library, curled in the leather chair reading, when Darian entered. He'd been drinking, not much, but enough to lower his defenses. "I need to apologize," he said abruptly. "For what?" "For treating you like a transaction when you're so much more." He crossed to her, each step deliberate. "For lying to myself that this is just business." Daisy stood slowly. "Darian." "Tell me to leave. Tell me this is a mistake." She should have, but her hands were already reaching for him. "I can't." He kissed her like a man drowning, like she was oxygen itself. The book tumbled to the floor as Daisy melted into him, months of tension exploding between them. His hands cradled her face with devastating gentleness, while his mouth claimed hers with fierce possession. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Darian rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he whispered. "I know." "The contract." "Screw the contract." He laughed, a sound of pure disbelief and joy. "Daisy O'Brien, what have you done to me?" For 2 weeks, they existed in a stolen paradise. Darian came home early. They had dinner conversations that lasted hours. He read to the baby every night, his hand warm on Daisy's belly. She was falling in love with him, and terrifyingly, she could see he was falling too. Then Grant Ashford struck. Darian received the call during breakfast. His face went ashen as he listened. "What happened?" Daisy asked when he hung up. "Ashford's launching a hostile takeover. He's been secretly buying shares for months. If I don't counter immediately, I'll lose Royce Global." His hands shook. "There's an emergency board meeting in an hour. I need to—" His phone rang again. This time, it was Mrs. Chen, panicked. "Mr. Royce, Ms. O'Brien is—" "I'm right here," Darian said, confused. Daisy felt it then, the sharp, tearing pain low in her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over. "Daisy," Darian caught her. "What's wrong?" Something's not right." Mrs. Chen was already calling 911. Darian lifted Daisy into his arms, his face a mask of terror. "Sir," his assistant burst through the door, "the board is waiting. If you're not there in 30 minutes, Ashford wins by default. You'll lose everything." Darian looked at his assistant, then down at Daisy. She saw the calculation flash across his face, the empire he'd built versus the woman in his arms. If you believe love should always come before money and power, hit that subscribe button. People like Grant Ashford won't, and you need to hear what happened next. "Tell the board I'm not coming," he said. "Sir, you'll lose." "I said I'm not coming." His voice was thunder. "Nothing matters more than her. Nothing." In the ambulance, Darian held Daisy's hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. His phone buzzed incessantly with updates he ignored. "You're losing your company," Daisy gasped between contractions of pain. "I don't care. Darian, your empire." "You are my empire." His gray eyes burned into hers. "Don't you understand? I spent 3 years building walls, convinced that control and money could fill the void Eliza left. I turned myself into a machine because machines don't break. But you, God, Daisy, you walked into my life and reminded me what it means to be human." Tears streamed down her face. "The baby." "We'll be fine. You both will be fine. And even if I lose every dollar, every company, every piece of that glass tower, I'll still be the richest man alive because I'll have you." At the hospital, Dr. Khalil examined Daisy while Darian paced outside, fielding increasingly desperate calls from his team. Grant Ashford was moving forward. The board was in chaos. His stock was plummeting. Finally, Dr. Khalil emerged. "She's stable. False alarm. Stress-induced cramping. The baby is perfectly healthy." Darian nearly collapsed with relief. "Can I see her?" "Of course." He found her sitting up in bed, looking exhausted but whole. The moment their eyes met, she started crying. "I'm so sorry. Your company." Love conquers all if you're Team Daisy. The empire can't win against real love. Now watch what happens when everything comes together. Darian crossed to her in 3 strides, gathering her into his arms. "Stop. Just stop. I made my choice and I'd make it again 1,000 times. You and this baby are everything. The company is just buildings and money." "But it was your legacy, Eliza's legacy." "No." He pulled back to look at her. "Eliza would have wanted me to choose life, to choose love. She wouldn't want me spending eternity in a mausoleum of my own making." He cupped Daisy's face. "I love you, not as a surrogate, not as a vessel, as the woman who saved me from myself." What Darian didn't know was that Sarah Kim, the Meridian Technologies founder, had been watching everything unfold. She'd seen him abandon his board meeting. She'd tracked the financial suicide he was committing for love. And she'd been on the phone with every major shareholder of Royce Global. When Darian finally returned to his office 2 days later, prepared to salvage what he could, he found Sarah waiting with his entire board. "What's this?" he asked warily. Sarah smiled. "A mutiny. The good kind. I convinced your board that a man who'd sacrifice everything for the woman he loves is exactly the kind of leader we need. Someone with actual humanity. We blocked Ashford's takeover. You're welcome." Darian stared. "Why?" "Because you proved me right. You don't gut companies, you build them. You don't see people as assets, you see them as human beings. That's rare in our world. I'm extending my hand. I'm officially partnering with Royce Global. Together, we're going to change the energy sector." Later that evening, Darian came home to find Daisy in the nursery they'd started preparing together. She was hanging tiny stars on the ceiling, one hand resting protectively on her growing bump. "Hey," he said softly. She turned, radiant in the golden light. "Did you save your empire?" "I did better. I redefined it." He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands covering hers on her stomach. An empire isn't buildings or stock prices. It's not control or power. An empire is what you build with the people you love, what you protect, what you pass down. That sounds like the Darian Royce I fell in love with. He turned her to face him. "Marry me." "What?" "Marry me. Not because of the baby or the contract or anything else. Marry me because I can't imagine my life without you. Because you're not just carrying my heir, you're the woman destined to rule my empire beside me." Daisy's smile could have lit the entire city. Yes, 1,000 times yes. 6 months later, Daisy stood in the same penthouse where she'd once felt so out of place, but now it was home. She held their daughter, Elena Rose, while Darian addressed a packed room of business leaders at their charity gala for community centers. "My late wife taught me about legacy," he said, "but Daisy taught me about life. This foundation, in my father-in-law's name, will ensure that places like O'Brien Community Center never have to close their doors, because the real measure of an empire isn't what you build for yourself, it's what you build for others." The room erupted in applause. Daisy caught his eye across the crowd, and the look they shared needed no words. He'd wanted her womb, but she'd given him so much more. She'd given him his humanity back, shown him that the greatest empires are built on love, not control. And in return, he'd given her a partnership that transformed them both. Their empire wasn't made of steel and glass. It was made of late-night feedings and shared laughter, of choosing each other every single day, of building something that would outlast any company, a family, a love, a legacy. Darian crossed the room to his wife and daughter, pulling them both close. The little girl who'd once been just a contract was now the heart of everything, and the woman who'd signed away 9 months of her life had instead claimed forever. "Ready to go home?" he murmured against Daisy's hair. She looked up at him, eyes shining. "I'm already there."